first reading is from Isaiah chapter 58, verses 1 through 9a. Shout out, do not hold back. Lift up your voice like a trumpet. Announce to my people their rebellion, to the house of Jacob their sins. Yet day after day they seek me and delight to know my ways, as if they were a nation that practiced righteousness and did not forsake the ordinance of their God. They ask of me righteous judgments. They delight to draw near to God. Why do we fast, but you do not see? Why humble ourselves, but you do not notice? Look, you serve your own interest on your fast day and oppress all your workers. Look, you fast only to quarrel and to fight and to strike with a wicked fist. Such fasting as you do today will not make your voice heard on high. Is such the fast that I choose, a day to humble oneself? Is it to bow down the head like a bulrush and to lie in sackcloth and ashes? Will you call this a fast, a day acceptable to the Lord? Is not this the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, and to bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own kin. Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. Your vindicator shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry for help, and he will say, Here I am. The word of the Lord.
Thanks.
Please read responsively with me Psalm 112, verses 1 through 9. Hallelujah! Happy are they who fear the Lord and have great delight in God's commandments.
Their descendants will be mighty in the land. The generation of the upright will be blessed.
Wealth and riches will be in their house, and their righteousness will last forever.
Light shines in the darkness for the upright. The righteous are merciful and full of compassion.
It is good for them to be generous in lending and to manage their affairs with justice.
For they will never be shaken. The righteous will be kept in everlasting remembrance.
They will not be afraid of any evil rumors. Their heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord.
Their heart is established and will not shrink until they see the desire upon their enemies.
They have given freely to the poor, and their righteousness stands fast forever. They will hold up their head with honor. Our second reading is from 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. When I came to you, brothers and sisters, I did not come proclaiming the mystery of God to you via lofty words or wisdom, for I had decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. And I came to you in weakness and in fear and in much trembling. My speech and my proclamation were not with plausible words of wisdom, but with a demonstration of the Spirit and of power, so that your faith might rest not on human wisdom, but on the power of God. Yet among the mature we do speak wisdom, though it is not a wisdom of this age or of the rulers of this age, who are doomed to perish. But we speak God's wisdom, secret and hidden, which God decreed before the ages of our glory, for our glory. None of the rulers of this age understood this, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. But as it is written, what no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor the human heart conceived, what God has prepared for those who love him. These things God has revealed to us through the Spirit, for the Spirit searches everything, even the depths of God. For what human being knows what is truly human except the human spirit that is within? So also no one comprehends what is truly God's except the Spirit of God. Now you have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit that is from God, so that we may understand the gifts bestowed on us by God. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
The Holy Gospel is from Matthew chapter 5, beginning at verse 13. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Remember that passage, by the way. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. The gospel of the Lord. Right. Thanks, Tracy, for asking. A good-looking group up there, by the way, isn't it? And Jim's going to join in whenever the Spirit so moves him, right, Jim? Jim was one of our quiet leaders, for those of you that know Jim pretty well. We're going to talk a little bit about the group of us that went down to Texas to volunteer. We're also going to talk a little bit, or I'll expand on that hopefully a little bit and give you a few other things to think about along the way. I'm not a preacher. Some of you have heard this before. I have a brother who was a minister who just retired actually in October. So there's going to be some audience expectations for some discussion, especially since we're nice and small here. We can do that. Well, we do it anyway. But so please do think about this a little bit. There was 5 of us that went down, and the person in the middle is Andrea. Andrea is the house that we worked on. First of all, a little background. How long ago did Hurricane Harvey take place? Anybody remember? About? Yes. No? Half of that. About 2.5 years ago is when Hurricane Harvey hit South Texas. And so keep that in mind a little bit because, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, there's lots of homes in the Houston area, and that wasn't the epicenter. The epicenter was actually down by Rockport, where we all went a couple years ago. But there's lots of homes in that area that haven't really been touched, and Andrea's was one of those. And we'll talk a little bit about that and what has been happening. But I want you to, this is the passage that was in our gospel, strictly by accident. Wasn't planned this way. It was the gospel that happened to be for today. And that is, in the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. When else do we hear that in our service here at St. John's? When else is that passage used? Anybody recall? It's almost said the same way. In our baptisms, it's always said after the child has been, or the adult has been baptized. Remember that? It's real similar to this, if it isn't exactly, when we hand them the candle, or the sponsors a candle. And many, when I was a kid growing up, in our church service, it was always under good works were, you shouldn't strive for good works. Works weren't, we strictly, anybody else grow up that way? That we were just supposed to have faith, we were just supposed to give glory to God, we were just supposed to worship. Good works weren't one of the quote requirements of church, which I always thought was really, really odd. And thank God that my father's philosophy always is that volunteering, and this is for all you guys too, volunteering is a privilege. You have some skills. Whether you have health, whether you have good health and you can physically do things, whether you have a great mind and you can give back that way, that volunteering has always been a privilege. And that's truly what my father taught us. And that's, when I was a kid, that didn't always seem the right thing because we were always helping on other people. But that was just the way it was, and we became to just expect that. And now, to me, it's what I try to do. In my life is really to look at it that way, that volunteering is a privilege. But also, one of the anybody ever read Jim Hunter's work? Jim Hunter's book, Servant Leadership. You ever hear of the Servant Leadership program? Viterbo actually has a program in servant leadership. This is kind of the basis for what they believe. Get away from a self-centered life and get to an other-centered life so that you're actually helping others. You're thinking about others. You do what's good for you, but you also do what's good for others, and that's how you live your life. Jim Hunter is a business consultant, actually, and that's what his consulting firm believes in, and that's how they teach and advise others in consulting. So I think in that way is kind of why those of us who go do what we do is try to do that a little bit of, wow, I don't know what's going on there, a little bit of a self-centered life. I also looked up a couple of the other passages that relate to this. If it is encourage, then if it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully, from Romans 12, chapter 8. And I want to spend just a couple minutes talking about that. I think everybody needs to find their way that they give back to God and give back to others, and therefore giving back to God. And I think we can all find that way. It just sometimes challenges us a little bit more. And we're going to expand this a little bit. The question being, how do we serve others at St. John's? And let's expand that out a little bit just from, I didn't bring my flip chart today because it was in my car. But what are ways that we do at St. John's? How do we meet this passage from Romans? How do we serve others? This is the participation part, by the way.
Sunday supper.
The Sunday supper is a great example. How else?
County food pantry.
County food pantry hosted here. The quilts, the quilting group. How else?
School kits.
The school kits.
Bucket chick.
The bucket chick. Bucket chick. Yeah, there we go. How else?
Helping a family at Christmas.
Yep, helping out a family at Christmas.
Supporting our youth in the mission trips and
Yep.
the Bible camps.
Yep. You guys can participate too. Doesn't have to be here at St. John's. How else do we support others? We serve others.
In-home visits, I guess.
In-home visits? Yep.
Shoveling sidewalks for your neighbors.
Shovel your neighbor's sidewalk. It's fresh on everybody's mind today. Other ways.
Blood mobile.
The blood drive? Yep. I think we can make a lot of the things. I think sometimes we think it has to be a direct, organized plan. Shoveling is an example of something that isn't. I look at it, and Perry joined us last week to play church dartball. There's a couple of the churches we don't have anybody in our church right now like that they have, in Larry wouldn't mind. How many of you know Larry Thompson from Nelson? Yeah, Larry's has had a disability for many, many years, probably all his life for all I know. But Larry still plays church dartball. Everybody's patient with him. He has to have two people stand next to him because his balance is so bad now. And once in a while, one of them gets stabbed when he had his backstroke. But to me, that's a way to serve. I mean, he needs that in his life, as everybody needs that in their life. How else? We're off to the races. Other ways? Churches or our community? How about at school?
Like after school program.
The after school program?
Volunteer at school.
We're not moving on until I get an answer out of one of the people less than 30 here. You can cheat. What did Mom say?
Don't we do cleanup?
Community beautification.
Yeah, that's where you guys go around, right? At school? Great, thank you. There's lots and lots of ways. I think many times we limit ourselves to say, in order to serve other people, it's got to be organized. It's got to be an organized event. We need publicity and all that other kind of stuff. To me, we probably do our best work when it isn't that way. Just seeing somebody needs a hand, and you'll probably hear, hopefully our sound turns out okay on here, Andrea say that actually in her community. We'll talk a little bit about what we do. So you probably recognize a few of these people. Jim Richer and Jim Lodemeyer from our church, Mel Danzinger, who many of you know, and then the young guy in the front, some of you probably don't know, works for Land Conservation. His name is Tim Worker. And I think part of our mission also is to serve each other as we do these type of events. And I think that you guys when we went to Mississippi, I think we do that. We help and nurture each other when we do these type of events. And I think you'll all find that out too, that you'll actually nurture each other. One of the things about going south that I always need a reminder when you go south, people wear their religion on their sleeve is how I talk about it. They're very, very open about their religion, especially those that are Baptist and Methodist. It's just commonplace for them to talk about their faith and to talk about God in their everyday life. We're a little more reserved, I suppose, up in the Midwest. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just a little bit different whenever I go and experience that. The other thing is when we first got to the organization that we went with, they said, well, Andrea hasn't been saved yet, which is a different way of saying that she's not an active church member. I think we all know in our hearts whether we truly believe or not, but in the South, again, you wear your religion on your sleeve. Andrea is originally from Brooklyn, wasn't it, Jim? So she's maybe not quite in tune with the religion of the South, but that was one of our missions also from the organization we went. But being the conservative folks we are, I don't know if we were successful in that. But I think we all need to find a way to do that whatever type of mission we do it. And when I say that, there's lots of different ways to get connected. My wife Cindy did her master's down at Viterbo in servant leadership. When she was there, the gentleman on the left with his wife is Jervy Wyndham, is his name. Jervy was also doing his master's. Jervy's from he's settled in that area of Texas. He's a retired Army, I don't know, you remember, Jim? Were you there when he talked about it? Yeah, I can't remember exactly what his position was, but he was retired from the U.S. Army. He became a minister, has his own church, resident Baptist or resident Methodist church is what it's called, in a really pretty poor area south of Houston. But I met him just in passing when I went to a program with Cindy down at Viterbo. We got to talking. He said, "Hey, we got this great program. If you ever know anybody who wants to come down." The program, the two people on the right, the lady with the plaid red shirt is Monica. She was our contact person. She does their volunteer recruitment. So Jervy connected us with Monica. The guy, and Ted is the guy in the green with the hat on. And Ted is kind of their associate director of this program called 4B Disaster Response. And talk a little bit about what 4B is. First of all, it's down by the Galveston area. They don't really do a lot of work in Houston or in Houston itself. It's just south of Houston is where their mission is, and it actually compiles that little section south of Houston. And in that little section, there's still about 8,000 families that nothing really has been done with their homes in 2.5 years, and lots of lower income, some low income people. Lots of people that were underinsured if they had insurance. We'll talk a little bit about Andrea's situation. Lots of people that really can't afford insurance. And then sadly enough, a lot of people that contractors came in, took the insurance money and left and never did any of the work, which is way more common than it ought to be in today's world. But those are the circumstances where people end up being. Again, in Philippians, it is, let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interest of others. And I think that's what you'll all find out as you do your mission trip this summer. That's what we all find out whenever we help somebody out. There's always somebody out there that we can help, and then there's a few people that always need a little bit of help. This is, try the...
Oh, you did. See, this is Andrea. And we're working on her nose.
Hi.
That's Jim Lodemeyer there.
Might be, it's our last year meeting tomorrow morning, but she's working every day, so she came home a little early, so she can visit with us. And this is about, the homeowner, and she went through the RV disaster a couple years ago, and pretty much devastated her life. So, yeah. So what happened? I mean, what happened? Where were you when the storm hit?
I was here,
Yeah?
and I was getting ready to go to work the next day, so I was home and I was crashed on the couch. That was the room down there.
Yeah, this is the kitchen
Yeah,
den area.
yeah, so this was a den, and I was laying around and fell asleep, and I woke up to loud rain. I mean, I've never heard that kind of shit before. And I was gonna go check on my pets. I have rescue, and I was going to check on them and put my feet down, and I was in the water. And that was really scary, and I thought a pipe had broken. So I could hear the sounds of like water getting into some of my electronics, and I was trying to pull the plugs. I was thinking I was going to get electrocuted, so I started to pull the plugs. Any plug I could find, pulling plugs, and then I ran up here, and I ran into this room back here to check on animals. I just looked really scared, and water was starting to come up. And so I had to figure out what was I going to do. People were all over Facebook and texting and, help, help, help. And 4 feet water, 5 feet water. I mean, they needed help. And I had no idea what was going to lead this. So I started tethering us together, me and the dogs. I had their leashes, and I was putting leashes on me, and then I was putting leashes on them. And I figured if the water gets much higher, I'll just attach us to each other. And I had my cats and carriers, and I was just trying to keep us safe and alive. And as the water rose, I brought the dogs up and in here, and I was just trying to find the highest spot to stay. And then I could hear sounds coming from this side of the house, but it was coming from above. So that room was literally, it was raining. As hard as it was outside, it was raining that hard inside. It was a scary night. I lost power. I lost my cell phone. There was no communication. It was just me and the house. And I had a flashlight. I did have one flashlight. We made it through the night.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a life-threatening experience. Yeah.
And the house was, there was water everywhere, and the house was ruined. And my journey began.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's an amazing story.
I lived in the bathroom. The bathroom that is now literally being torn up because it was torn up. And I was here by myself, and
That was 2.5 years ago you've been living in
like this.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen them, but
Yeah, I
this
took a
and worse.
video through the house, but now it's all put together almost as far as the sheetrock, and all from volunteers from 4D and
That's just amazing. I was telling you earlier that I can't get someone to help me out, my neighbors to help me out of the ditch when I get stuck mowing the grass, and here are complete strangers coming into my life and putting my life back together.
So cool. Thank you. All right. See ya.
Interview ended abruptly because she had to go cry then. So it's but some of it was a little bit hard to hear, so kind of paraphrase a little bit of it. She does animal rescue. Jim got to meet one of her dogs. He became great friends with it when him and Mel were replacing an exterior door. But she's divorced. She got this house just before the hurricane. Remember, she's from Brooklyn. They hadn't had a hurricane in the years that she had lived there, not really knowing what to expect. They're 20 miles off the coast, so generally the hurricanes don't affect them a lot, short of money. So when she got a house insurance, the insurer told her, we haven't had a flood here in over 40 years, so you don't need flood insurance. So she saved the money and didn't buy the flood insurance, not required from where they lived to have it. The roof was torn off with the hurricane, about half the roof was. She had insurance for wind, and so she got the roof put back on. But I think, if I remember right, they had about 20 inches of rain with the hurricane. So all that rain came into her house. That was all considered flood damage. So therefore, none of that was covered with insurance. She had a pretty decent job. She worked for the county of Galveston, but there just wasn't any money to fix anything up. And so she literally lived in this grubby little bathroom for about 2 years before. I don't remember the story, and I don't know if I heard the whole story of how 4B got connected with her. She didn't belong to one of the churches. There was basically 4 churches that started this. Now there's hundreds of churches that give to the program. But somehow she got connected. Somebody either talked with her or discovered her and how she was living, because the house hadn't been gutted or anything yet for over 2 years since the hurricane. So lots of mold, lots of mildew. It was pretty bad. And if you heard her, and I don't think she was meaning to say anything bad about her neighbors. You know, she got stuck mowing her lawn and nobody would even stop and help her. Most of us that live in Buffalo County, you're probably somebody would stop by to help you if you got stuck mowing your lawn, wouldn't they? For the most part. But I think you won't have to go very far to any city that's a little larger to realize that no, people don't do that much anymore. People would just go by and say, "Oh, somebody must be helping her out," and avoid her. If y'all remember the story of the Good Samaritan, correct? Who went by first? Not in order. Who were the first 2 that went by, right? The priest and kind of like both religious people, right? That went by first and didn't help out, and who helped her? In the prodigal son, or not the prodigal son. Wow, I'm not a preacher, you understand. In the Good Samaritan, who helped her out? A stranger, right? And I think that kind of explains what's happening down in this area of Texas right now. So then another passage from Galatians, where it talks, bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. In the Bible, and Jesus, and part of his mission was telling us to help each other out. When we see somebody that needs help, help them. When it doesn't matter if you know them or not. It doesn't matter if they're family or friend. Help them. You'll receive. And this is again back to, I was raised very, very conservative, religious Lutheran church. We're always taught that you don't expect any rewards when you're on earth. All your rewards come after you die and in heaven. Anybody else raised that way? Yeah, there's a few of us that were raised that way. I don't know about, and Jim can expound upon this if he so chooses, but to me, whenever I do things like this, I get my rewards right now, because this is what makes me feel good, is be able to help and be able to help somebody else out, especially somebody who can't help themselves at that point in time and really, really needs it. You want to expound upon that, Jim? Okay. I shouldn't pick on Jim, should I? So Jim Lodemeyer is our foreman when we go, and it's, I don't know, natural selection. Jim just has a way about him with doing that. And he was kind of our social chairman too with Andrea. They seemed to connect right away, and so that's why the interview. Jim does have a little video of the house and what we did. He did a walkthrough. I'm not going to show that today. I'm pretty sure we're doing breakfast next month, and so if you're interested, we'll put that up on the screen along with the video from Andrea again. But the house was had been gutted. They had treated it. Usually when a house goes through a hurricane, there's lots of mold and mildew, so they go through and spray bleach solution on to kill the mold. Most of it was insulated, and quite a bit of it was sheetrock. We finished the sheetrocking. I said Jim and Mel put an exterior door in. We had to replace some of the sheetrock. Some of it wasn't. Whenever you have volunteers, some things don't always get done right the first time. So you go through and fix some things that were done incorrectly. And then we taped and mudded the house. When we left, it was pretty much ready to sand and then paint. And I have Here we go. This was a clip that was put on the 4B's Facebook page yesterday. I saw it last night. This was over the weekend. They had a group of, they're called Godspeed Riders. They're a motorcycle group down, I think they were from the Texas area, where they were in, they sanded it and they were painting it. And my guess is, hopefully in another week or two, Andrea will actually be back in a house that is livable. She's been living in it, but we worked around all what little she had left. We were working around, and so it's getting really, really close to being finished, and which is pretty cool. There is so far the 4B Disaster Response Network. They've done 665 homes have been repaired, people back in them in a livable condition. There's lots and lots of work to grow. They're only one organization. Unfortunately, the Luther Disaster Response isn't down in that area. I think they have a center down by Rockport that's staffed somewhat yet. Hurricane Harvey didn't really get the notoriety, didn't get the recognition that some of the other hurricanes did, like Katrina, Michael on the East Coast, etc. I'm not exactly sure why. I have no idea why. But there are organizations. They are doing pretty good work. These guys and Don and Jean realized when we went down to Mississippi, the tools were scattered. These guys were organized. They had way better tools than we took along with us. It was pretty cool. It's they have this organization has a way about them that I haven't seen on any of the other trips that we've gone and organizations we worked with. I think part of it because it was grassroots, really, really small, organized by 4 pastors of churches in that area, and then has grown from there. So in the same way, I want to end with what we started with. Again, the passage. In the same way, let your light shine before others so they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Hopefully we can all see that. Don's modest because he didn't say anything about Luther Park except for that we send kids to camp. He does a lot of volunteering up there. I think he donated, $2.5 million or something like that? Well, maybe not quite all of it, right? To the new center they're building, which has a roof on now, right? Which is really cool. A great mission that he gets involved in. All of you have missions that you're involved in. And some of them are silent and nobody ever knows about them. And some of them are out there and people see what you're doing. So want to end by just saying, I hope all of you youth that are going, and the adults going with, are you going to? Well, no, you're not going. Hopefully you all get to experience the same thing that at least I've been able to have the privilege of experiencing, going and helping out other people. Helping out strangers can be really, really, really rewarding, and I encourage you all to do it.